The most dangerous person in any room is never the loudest. They don't announce themselves, they don't need to. While everyone else is performing strength, they are accumulating it, quietly, methodically, and completely out of sight. History's greatest conquerors, empire builders, and power brokers shared one weapon more devastating than any army, any fortune, any alliance. They allowed themselves to be underestimated, and the people who dismissed them, they never recovered. We live in a world that worships visibility, where people perform success before they've achieved it, where status is announced on social media, in boardrooms, at dinner tables. And that hunger for recognition, that desperate need to be seen as powerful before you actually are, has destroyed more ambitious people than failure ever could. Because the moment your enemies see you coming, they prepare. The figures we're about to study understood something most people never will. Invisibility is a superpower, and deliberately appearing smaller, weaker, or less threatening than you truly are is not weakness. It is the oldest, most ruthless strategy in the history of human power. Let's begin. The year is 44 BC. Julius Caesar has just been assassinated on the steps of the Senate. Rome is in chaos. The most powerful men in the world are scrambling for control. Mark Antony, commander of Caesar's legions. Brutus and Cassius, the conspirators. Cicero, the most feared orator of the age. And then there is a boy, 18 years old, sickly since birth, no army, no political base, no battle experience. A teenager named Octavian, Caesar's obscure great-nephew, who had just inherited a dead man's name and a world full of enemies who wanted him dead before he could become a problem. Mark Antony refused to even hand over Caesar's funds to him. Brutus and Cassius literally ignored him and left Rome, considering him too insignificant to bother killing. Cicero, Rome's most brilliant political mind, looked at this frail, unknown boy and saw an opportunity. He famously wrote that Octavian could be used, praised, and then discarded. Every single one of them underestimated him. Within 13 years, Octavian, now calling himself Augustus, had destroyed every last one of them. Antony was dead. Brutus was dead. Cassius was dead. Cicero was executed on Antony's orders with Augustus's quiet approval. And Augustus, he would rule Rome for 44 years. He became the most powerful human being who had ever lived. The man who turned a crumbling republic into the greatest empire on earth. He did it not by showing his hand, but by never letting anyone see the hand he held. Let them dismiss you. It is a gift. Every time someone underestimates you, they lower their guard. They stop watching, they stop preparing, and in the space that their arrogance creates, you build. Powerful people do the opposite. They smile, they say little, they go home and they work. The year is 1206. On the vast Mongolian steppe, a man who spent his childhood enslaved, abandoned and starving, has just declared himself the ruler of all Mongolia. His name is Temujin. You know him as Genghis Khan. His early life reads like a story designed to break a person. His father was poisoned by enemies when Temujin was 9. His own tribe abandoned his family to die on the steppe. He was later captured and enslaved by a rival clan. He escaped, and for years the great civilizations surrounding Mongolia, the Jin dynasty of China, the Islamic Khwarezmian Empire, the kingdoms of Persia, they looked out at the Mongolian steppe and they saw nothing. A collection of primitive nomads, barbarians who fought each other over horses and cattle. Not worth thinking about. They never saw what was being built, because Genghis Khan never told them. And when he finally moved, the world didn't see it coming until it was too late. Genghis Khan unleashed the full force of the Mongol Empire. Within 3 years, one of the largest empires in the world had been erased. Cities that had stood for centuries, Samarkand, Bukhara, Nishapur, reduced to rubble. The Shah of Khwarezm died as a fugitive on a small island in the Caspian Sea with nothing left. Never announce your next move. Power is not built in speeches. It is not built in declarations. It is built in the dark, in silence, through consistent action that no one can see until it is already done. The most dangerous builders in history built in silence. They moved quietly. And by the time anyone understood what had happened, the game was already over. The year is 1870. In Cleveland, Ohio, a young bookkeeper named John D. Rockefeller has just started an oil refinery. The railroad barons of America, Vanderbilt, Scott, needed someone to fill their empty freight trains with oil barrels. They weren't looking for a titan. They were looking for a useful little supplier. Rockefeller seemed perfect. Quiet, polite, religious. A modest young man who showed up to church every Sunday and gave 10% of his income to charity. He didn't dress extravagantly. He didn't boast. He negotiated gently, smiled often, and never raised his voice. The railroad barons signed a contract with him and went back to running their empires, thinking nothing of the small businessman they'd just done a deal with. Neither Vanderbilt nor Scott realized they had just handed Rockefeller the leverage he needed to systematically buy up, undercut, and consume every oil refinery in America. Within a decade, Rockefeller controlled 90% of America's oil refineries. His fortune, adjusted for inflation, would exceed $400 billion today, making him the wealthiest private individual in all of recorded human history. And it began because powerful men who could have crushed him at any moment didn't take him seriously. He never gave them a reason to. Master the art of appearing small. This doesn't mean pretending to be weak. It means refusing to perform strength before it's strategically useful to reveal it. It means letting people believe they are using you, while you are, in fact, using them. Rockefeller let the railroads think they were the power. He was just the customer. Until one day, he was the only customer. And by then, he was negotiating from the other side of the table. When Napoleon Bonaparte arrived at the French Royal Military Academy in 1779, he was mocked from day one. He was not French. He was Corsican, considered a foreign barbarian by his aristocratic classmates. His accent was ridiculed. His clothes were inferior. The French nobility around him treated him with open contempt, calling him an outsider, a nobody, a boy who had no right to stand among them. Napoleon didn't just tolerate this contempt. He studied it. He understood something profound. The people who mock you tell you exactly where they are vulnerable. Their arrogance is the map to their weakness, and the fury you feel when dismissed, if it doesn't consume you, becomes the most powerful fuel on earth. By 1804, Napoleon had crowned himself Emperor of France. He had conquered most of continental Europe. The same aristocratic class that had mocked his accent was bowing before him, or had fled the continent entirely. He once said, "Impossible is a word found only in the dictionary of fools. Turn contempt into fuel. Every dismissal is a deposit. Every time someone tells you that you're not ready, not smart enough, not the right type, not from the right background, they are handing you something, not an insult, an obligation. The obligation to come back prepared, silent, calm, and completely unstoppable. The ones who win, they spend it in the dark, in the work, in the preparation, and they let the results do the talking. Every figure we've studied shared one discipline that is almost impossible to maintain: patience. not passive patience, not the patience of someone who has given up, the patience of a predator. Augustus waited 13 years, building alliances, managing perception, and appearing unthreatening, before he had consolidated enough power to rule Rome unopposed. Genghis Khan spent years unifying the Mongol tribes before he ever turned his eye outward to the great empires. He knew he wasn't ready. So he waited and built. And when he finally moved, there was nothing that could stop him. Rockefeller spent years becoming indispensable before he made his move to consolidate. By the time his competitors realized what was happening, they had already been surrounded. The common thread is not intelligence, not ambition, not even ruthlessness. It is timing. Machiavelli himself wrote in The Prince, "Never attempt to win by force what can be won by strategy. Force is the weapon of the impatient. Strategy is the weapon of the inevitable. Strike only when the moment is absolute. The person who can hold their fire longest wins. Not because waiting is virtuous, because preparation is power. Every day you wait while working, they are sleeping. The gap widens invisibly until the moment you choose to make it visible. And by then, there is nothing left for them to do. Look at the world around you right now. The people performing the most power, posting the most, talking the loudest, making the biggest announcements, are often the ones building the least. And somewhere in silence, someone is watching all of that noise, studying it, understanding it, building something no one can see yet. The art of being underestimated is not a trick. It is not a technique you apply once. It is a philosophy of how you move through the world. It is the decision to prioritize substance over perception, strategy over announcement, long-term inevitability over short-term validation. The 5 principles. 1. Let them dismiss you. Their contempt is your cover. 2. Never announce your next move. Build in silence. 3. Master the art of appearing small. Let them underestimate the scale of what you're building. 4. Turn every dismissal into fuel. Let the ones who doubted you fund your discipline. 5. Strike only when the moment is absolute. Patience is not weakness. It is the final preparation before total victory. Augustus, Genghis Khan, Rockefeller, Napoleon. They were not gods. They were not born to greatness. They were people who understood something most will never grasp. The most powerful move you can make in any game is to make your opponent forget you're playing. If this landed differently than you expected, if something here shook something loose in how you've been thinking, subscribe, because this is just the beginning of what we're going to explore here. The game goes deeper than most people ever go. Let's go deeper.